Um, Hello, everyone, and so sorry for being a little bit late. I think we were just kind of gathering ourselves back to ourselves this morning. Um, so apologies for being a little bit late, but I'm here. I'm Ngozi from Gaborone, here doing the co-reading experience. It's chapter 13, which is the last chapter.
Ah,
How do you feel, Timelo? Timelo's joining us from Pretoria. A red black girl is joining us from Pretoria. How are you feeling, girl?
uh, I don't know. I've got like Julius was saying yesterday. I've got like separation anxiety already. So I'm just
Yeah,
like, what are we gonna do after this, right? I've
yeah.
been waking up because of this. I had like an appointment every day. So now what's gonna happen?
I know.
Um, right. So yeah, I'm just there. But yeah, I mean, yeah, but I'm also excited because I mean, this could only mean bigger, better things, right?
I think so. I think
Yeah,
so. I think an opportunity to continue to to grow and connect. I think it's been a really nice sort of experiment and experience of sisterhood and community. Like even though we're so far apart, all of us, but
mm,
it's still like been such a lovely space. But I'm talking as
it
if
has.
we're done when we still have
No,
walking in the spirit left to talk about.
we still have that.
Yes. Um, so I'll just kind of start by um, so my experience of this chapter was a little bit hurried. I only kind of got through the last couple of pages literally a few minutes before we got on today. Um, and I mean, despite that, and it was also a nice, sweet chapter, I feel like it was a really nice conclusion or a nice kind of wrapping up of the entire process, especially because I'm not sure. I mean, she's done it throughout the book, but Belle particularly gets like personal. She gets super personal in this chapter about her experience of writing the book, and also kind of her reason for writing the book, which she
Yeah,
eventually then grounds in her experience of spirituality and spirit, which I thought was pretty awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah. Uh, yeah. I mean, I concur. I feel the same. I feel like, um, even with yesterday's chapter, it was very light. Um, I also read it like hurriedly, although I read it like at midnight, but I was also like half asleep when I read the chapter.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I felt like it was just a nice bringing everything together and summing up. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so one of the things that I particularly enjoyed or that came up, so there were a few things that came up when I read this chapter. And I think for the first time in a very long time, I was able to broach the subject of spirituality and religion without this immense feeling of anxiety. Um,
Yeah.
because, I mean, uh, as I'm sure a number of us, were kind of maybe raised in the church or we grew up in the church, and some of us still find a lot of kind of peace and connection with God in the church and in the context of our various religions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but my like personally, even though I grew up in the church and my mom is still very much a Christian woman, um, I found solace and like freedom and a spiritual home outside of the church, which has often caused quite a bit of tension. And it's not like a new thing. Like I've been a weird kid since a quote unquote weird kid since like long time since I was a teenager. Um
Yeah.
and so kind of the journey, and I still feel like I'm still searching. Like I don't position myself anywhere specifically. Um
Mm.
but yeah, it's really interesting that no matter where we find ourselves spiritually. just kind of the principle of some sort of spiritual practice can really strengthen, a person and strengthen us, as we kind of create and do the work of creating and envisioning this new world that I think we have to
Yeah.
do the work of doing like right now, in
Yeah.
light of the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And I love how Belle writes. She writes, "When I speak of the spiritual, I speak of the higher self, the place within that is loving, kind, abundant, joyful." Um, so, oh yeah, she was quoting from somewhere actually. So I'm also like you. I've been, I think this year it's been almost 10 years since I left the church. I mean, it was a big thing for me. It was humongous. It was huge because I
Yeah.
come literally from like a traditional church. I come, everybody in my house is something. I come from like a long line of Matotana and Bumevasaparo and,
Mm.
all of that, right? And I was like almost on the youth pastor route when I left church. But yeah, and I mean, I still find a lot of solace. I always say, my mom always goes off at me at like me listening to Joyous One. Um, that I still have, and I'm just always like, this album just does the things for me because I'm a musical person, right? I'm a drum person.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's what my spirit moves to. It moves to music, but also nature, and I love how she takes the spiritual within, right? There's somewhere I read when I was younger that God is us and we are God. So it's not about a building where you go to. It's not about which God you pray to. It's not about how you pray. It's about finding peace and solace within yourself. So I think that, and I love how she also writes that spirituality sustains most Black women I know who are engaged in the recovery process. For some of us, spiritual life is linked to traditional Christian faith. Others of us expand our horizons as we speak and give expression to our faith in gods, goddesses, or in higher powers. So I love how she was just like throwing it out there. She's just like,
Yeah.
like, you find your niche. You find it wherever you find solace, wherever you find peace, wherever you find, and that is wherever you ground yourself, and that is where you will then come back to yourself and find healing. Yeah.
I love that so much. I also just want to say hi to Silailo and Dudu who've joined us. Good morning, everybody. And, and like I really enjoy as well in the chapter where Belle refers to Black women characters in books, like also works of fiction, and the way that um, spirituality plays a role in kind of the development and growth of the character, which also kind of forms a blueprint or like a roadmap for the way that spirituality can enhance our own lives. And
Yes.
she mentions Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. She references that, oh my gosh, hey, discrimination, askis with low.
What happened?
I was like, hi, ladies. And then he's like, discrimination, haha, I'm a man. Oh, my bad, my bad. That's my blinders. Those are my blinders. I've taken them off now.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite authors, Octavia Butler, she writes one of her most well-known works is called Parable of the Sower, and it's one of my favorite books, I think, of all time. In it, there's a protagonist who's kind of in a post-apocalyptic world, and she's got to kind of move with some survivors to a place of safety. And as part of this journey, she comes up with this idea. It's like a philosophy and a spirituality called Earthseed. So I'm just going to read like an excerpt from Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, where she says, we do not worship God. We perceive and attend God. We learn from God. With forethought and work, we shape God. In the end, we yield to God. We adapt, and I can't read my own writing here. We adapt and evolve, for we are earth seed and God is change. Um, and um, I love so much that she speaks of God as change. Um, and I mean, I know that's kind of, and I don't want to get into like a hectic debate because I know it can get quite hectic. Um, but like I know that uh, it kind of goes against, well, not against, or it's sort of in opposition to, when people speak in the Christian sense of kind of God being unchanging and the word of God being never changing and always steadfast. Um, and yet I find so much. I mean, of course, I believe that there are spiritual principles, and kind of there are laws that are unchanging, that it's just kind of like, you pray or you meditate, and this is the kind of benefit that comes from that kind of activity. However, I really feel in my experience and in my heart of hearts an affinity for this idea that God has changed. Because it kind of goes back to our conversation yesterday about how within nature-based philosophies and religions, there's so much emphasis on the changing of the elements, the changing of the seasons, the changing of movement of people, and that feels so much more natural to me.
Yes.
Yeah, like
And so I love that definition by Octavia. And I mean, change is defined as the process through which something becomes different, right? So it's a process. It's not like, and I mean, this aspect that you're bringing up is one of the reasons why I just kind of dissociated myself from church, because I felt like a lot of things, important things, right? There was just this internal structural fight within the church to keep things the same. In a time that was changing, in a time that was moving, in a time where, I mean, things were, we were all being challenged to expand our mindsets and our livelihood and everything. But then church, and I understand the whole issue with people wanting, because I mean, a lot of people ground themselves in the church structure, so if one thing is like never changing, if it's sitting the same and it's standing, and that whether you go back to it in January or December, it's like the same thing.
Yeah.
It's comfortable, right? But I mean, realistically, guys, continuous change, because times are changing, things are changing, people are growing, we need to like continuously, see ourselves in that way. I mean, you knew in yourself as a child will not be the same God that you know in yourself when you're 25 years old, when you're 30, when you're 45. So yeah, I think that's important.
I love so much how the higher self that Belle writes about in this chapter. I love how and I'm going to see if I can bring it up on screen in the book, where basically like the higher self is, I'm just going to see if I can. So the higher self is almost like like sort of infinitely joyful, infinitely compassionate, infinitely grounded. And our attempt to connect with our higher selves, or a higher power, or the creator power, however, or God, is it's a continuous process of kind of removing the barriers within ourselves that stop us from being completely compassionate and being completely joyful and experiencing joy, so fully, because sometimes we do that to ourselves. But she says here, and I just want to read from the book, where Belle writes, "Too many of us seem to be searching for something out there to make our lives complete. We feel alienated, lonely, and empty. No matter what
Yes.
we do or have, we never feel fulfilled. This feeling of emptiness or intense loneliness is our clue that we are off course and that we need to correct our direction. Often we think that the correction lies in a new mate, a house, a car, a job, or whatever. Not so. I believe that all of
Mm,
us are really, sorry, I believe what all of us are really searching for is this divine essence within ourselves.
mm.
Yeah, I like that so much because it is always that, like, it can be that, like, oh, I'll only be happy when I get a car, a new
Watch
car,
what.
or a job,
Mm,
or more
mm.
money at my job, or, but it's like, it's like,
Yeah, and a lot
yeah.
of us live that way. Yeah, it's like you put off the happiness until you achieve something, right?
Mm.
I mean, as much as we understand that whole work, 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 reward yourself, work, 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 reward yourself. Sometimes you just gotta work, reward, 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 work, because I mean, sometimes work is like long term, like long. I mean, you're not gonna wait 5 years or 3 years until you buy that house for you to be able to just treat yourself to like a spa, or like simple things, guys, simple things. So it's like,
Yo.
yeah, sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit, right? And that goes back to something that um is actually one thing that I was like a highlight when I left church, right? So I was like having a conversation and they were like it was actually a number of people and they were just like I just bought a new car, thank God. I just got a new house, thank God. I just got a promotion, thank God, if it wasn't for God. And I was just like, you went and got a loan. You're going to be paying this yourself for the next 20 years. You worked hard, right, at your job. You do your work well. That's why you got a promotion. Appreciate yourself. Like, you appreciate the effort that you are putting in to whatever you're doing, right? Because
Yo.
a lot of the achievements that you're achieving, yes, we acknowledge a greater power. We are grateful, right? But acknowledge what you're putting in. Acknowledge the effort that you're waking up, even when you don't want to do it. You're working against the odds, whatever it is that you're doing, but you're doing it, and you're doing it to yourself, right?
Yo, God doesn't operate in absence of people, like in
And
the absence of the efforts of people. Like, yeah, I feel like, yeah, like in a lot of ways, God acts through us. God acts through, yeah, through us, through each other, which is one of the reasons why I really also have an affinity for some of the Eastern-based religions as well, or Eastern-based spiritualities that kind of recognize God in one another. Like even in the saying of something like Namaste, it's like, I see the God in you. I recognize God in you. I recognize the divinity of a higher power. I recognize your divinity and your inherent spirituality and value and personhood, which is such a beautiful thing to say. And I think even when we greet each other ka Setswana or Sesotho and we say dumelang or dumela, it's also like such a wonderful like acknowledgement. It's like we're agreeing almost to be in each other's space. It's a recognition of our humanity and inherent spirituality and connectedness. I love that stuff
yeah,
so much. Like there's so many ways of like expressing it and experiencing spirituality and connection to God. um
mm,
which is so dope because Belle also writes about her writing practice being a spiritual practice for her in a lot of ways. um
yeah. So I just want to give a different lens to your greetings, right? So
yes.
for a very, very time, I was just like Namaste was my thing, right? I was just like Namaste, Namaste, because the whole I see you, you see me, right? And then when I was in living in KZN, I was using Sanmonani a lot,
Mm.
and one time I was sitting with somebody that's Rasta, and they were explaining the depth of it, right?
Mm.
So like it's plural for a reason, right? It's Tani, Bonani, right?
Yes.
So us, me, and those within me, those that live within me, those that carry me, those see you, and those that, right?
I love that.
And I mean, it's in our as well. It's always dumelang, right? Yes,
Lordly.
the plural.
Dumelang Lordly.
All of you know, those that I see. And I mean, that's African spirituality is so deep. I mean, in when you appease your ancestors, right? There's a thing where you say right? So all of you, so also those that I don't know, all of you that I see, also all of you that I don't see, right? Acknowledging that everywhere you are, in all the spaces that you are surrounded by community, right? That you yourself are community, right? And I just want to bring in a book, right? That it's so nice. I mean, when this whole debate of representation was coming up, all of us had to think about the very first time you saw yourself in a book, right? And I mean, although there are a lot, recently I read Freshwater.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and I was just like, oh my God, Ada is me and I am Ada, right? Because here is and is experiencing all the things, like things like where you have this alter ego that just is like sexual and is just breaking people's hearts and
a savage, an entire savage.
Right? Yeah, then you have this, and then all those conversations that you have with yourself in your heart and in your head, you realize that actually this is like the many pieces of me, the many pieces within me that are speaking to themselves. And and I know a friend of mine always says that like it, right? It's under you like a specific cigarette. And like, so every time I'd go to her house and I'd find her smoking, I'd be like, oh, right? And then she'd be like, yeah. And I hate the cigarette, but because it was Lamli iPhone at this one, right? And this is not even her main closey, it's like, a smaller side closey, right?
That's
so it's like so many, right? So many aspects to who we are ourselves, which goes back to the whole I am God and you are God and God is within us, right?
Ugh. Yes. I'm getting chills. I'm loving this conversation because I just keep getting like goosebumps. And I think I'd also like to share what Dudu has commented and shared. And she says, I also liked that passage from the book a lot. And she quotes, all of us are searching for the divine essence within. And we are all possessors of the divine within. Oh, close quote, sorry. And then she says, and we are all possessors of the divine within. This is true. Similar to what the quote from Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers referenced in the chapter a bit earlier. And she quotes, when I speak of the higher self, I speak of the place within that is loving, kind, abundant, joyful. Close quote. These are the divine and true qualities of I, the soul. You and I are souls in these bodies with the qualities of the highest power. We too are divine.
Yes. You know how the Rastas say I and I?
Yes.
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 Right? Guys, we need to see these things. We need
like
to pay attention.
It's
right?
really interesting because it brings me to kind of it's like a question again, that if we're now able to acknowledge, or we're sort of beginning to, on a bigger scale, on a wider scale, acknowledge the divinity that lives within us and that lives within others, how does that knowledge change the way we engage with ourselves and engage with other people? Because we're dealing with gods, guys. It's like, it's not just like, oh, that douchebag, blah blah blah, what. It's like you're talking to someone who is literally like in the image of God, and it's not they're not alone, you know. So how do you treat yourself? How do you speak to yourself? How do you honor that as well as extend that, I suppose, to others, you know, to others in your community.
So, so like Edlozini, right? It's like a whole, the rules. Like you don't, like even if you pray to your ancestors, you don't just arrive,
Mm,
right? Arrive wearing your mini skirt and just sit the way you want and speak the way you want. And I mean, me as a child, what I always do is I arrive and I am just like, Bahulubaga, you know that I'm a child,
mm,
right? I'm aware that I'm a child, and even in my treading, I tread carefully because I know that as children we make mistakes.
mm,
So, like, bear with me, right? So it's like a whole respect that you bring in. You're always like, I'm not coming. Respect is like big, big, big. It's huge. There's a line that I always use where I say, I'm not academically, right? I
mm.
don't come disrespectfully. I'm humbled. I'm like at my lowest. Please recognize, right? And to the question that you said, when you bring this to yourself, because you know that you're a god yourself. It's that whole queening, right? Treat yourself like a queen. Honor yourself, honor your body, honor your spirit. You know, honor the things within you, just like you wouldn't. And I don't know where I read this. Just like you wouldn't willingly wake up and go back to bed in like a dirty house, right? Like a house where it's just dirty. You've thrown everything everywhere. Fishes are there. There's like flies. There's like, so is your body. So, within that house, you will clean. You will wake up. You will do the work because it irritates you, right? It
Mm.
irritates you that you wake up, you will clean. And obviously there will be days. I mean, a lot of us I've gone through days during lockdown where I'm just like, today I'm not cleaning, guys. No. A lot, like I'm dealing with a lot more, right? But I'm not cleaning. But then the next day you wake up and be like, okay, cool. Today's a different day. Today I'm cleaning. I'm cleaning out my soul. I'm cleaning out my spirit. I'm sweeping out all those stuff that I don't want.
Yes.
Taking and everything, right? So is your body. So your body and your spirits are the same way. You need to take care of them, just like a garden. Water them, lots of light.
Oh, I love that. Because it also brings me back, and I do this a lot, which is I think really confusing for my mom in particular, where I'm not necessarily a practicing Christian, but because my first point of reference was the church and the Bible, like I often reference like scripture, right?
Yeah.
And what you just mentioned now, that process of like honoring yourself, honoring your space, honoring you. It's that thing of like the body is a temple, you know, also
Mm,
like, so just as you wouldn't nje go into a church and start like throwing feces around or like overturning tables or, you know, doing like, don't do that to yourself either. Like, look after yourself, honor your space, honor this space, you know, just the same way as you would give honor to um a sacred, I guess, a sacred dwelling or a sacred building, you know, um, which is really interesting. And I find I personally I love the resurgence that's happening among young people of our generation and younger, and a renewed interest and practice of African spirituality. Like it's something that I'm really, really pleased to see, you know. Um, and it's something that I've also been quite interested in just finding out a bit more about. But what makes it interesting as well is that the practice of Bungoma this side and the practice of African traditional religions in West Africa, for instance, there are
mm,
similarities, but there are also like vast differences.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting. It's a personal, also, like, it's a bit of a personal thing because I have West African, because my dad is Nigerian, and then mama ke Motswana Mosotho, so ho many one. But it's really interesting as well when you speak about the respect that one gives when one is communing and communicating with their ancestry, because um, there's um, something that I read once where this lady in the States who practices ATR, it was like a forum, and she writes something like, the first step to kind of putting up an altar and communing with your ancestors, the first thing to remember is you're a child, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you are their child. Literally, you are Ongwana Mola being. And um, the first thing you do, even if you just imagine you walk into a room with Baholo gathered, Baholo
Yes.
Bahaho gathered, the first thing you do, "Haikera wa Jumedisa," and you wouldn't even approach or go into that room dressed anyhow. You wouldn't go into that room drunk necessarily, like, um, you wouldn't go into that room in a brash or hectic way, but at the same
Yes.
time, you don't have to, like, don't be afraid, because this is your family. At the same time, it's like, wa dumedisa udumedisa sentehela, and you're talking to your elders, those who've transcended, who've passed on. So that for me also gave me quite a bit of comfort, in knowing that I don't have to be, like, afraid. Like, don't be afraid, because you
Yes.
know
Yes. Yes. So I love that because I mean it's family,
hmm.
right? That's how I think about it. So I think it's family, and just like at a big family gathering, when you sit with your ancestors, it's the same thing, right? There will be that drunk uncle that is, I mean, when somebody's trying to talk, just disturbing them. There'll be that very bitter aunt. And we need to recognize because I also know that a lot of people feel like our ancestors are harsh, right? They feel like, yeah, they're always out to punish us. They're always out. But if you think about them as like a family, right? Like literally your extended family, when you are together, that's how it is. There'll always be somebody that has something out for someone. And so, and they'll be holding some sort of grudge. You need to understand. And that's why, so there's a book that I read, I think 2 years ago. It's about, I think the title was "It's Not About You," something like that. But it's about generational trauma, right?
Mm.
And in the beginning, explains that as a female, when you are born, right? So like uh, a child, like a 6-year-old eggs, um, already have the DNA that 2 generations after will carry, right? So
Mm.
when you whatever the part of the trauma that you might be witnessing, that you, and I'll make an example. So there's like a family member of mine, like my age, right, that he kept going back to like having these vivid dreams and images, and would hear sound of like apartheid times where um break-ins, when they were like break-ins to the houses, and gunfire, and right.
Mm.
And then Kanti, we have an uncle, right, who was killed during one of those raids. Um, uh, so that, and the mother to this cousin of mine was present in that, in the space where the uncle was killed. So those things, like understanding family dynamics good back of people that you didn't even know, people that were that you were not alive when they were living, makes it all that much, because I know sometimes, I mean, I'll walk into a prayer space, and I will start speaking isiZulu, right?
Mm.
But I know that in my lineage there are Zulu people, right? So that is comforting. But at some point, it used to make me so nervous because I was like, why am I speaking Zulu? But then I realized that actually some of my cousins are Zulus, and I was just like, oh, okay, I know it's home, right? But I
Yes.
also will not like, you know what, guys, you know what? Like it's not working out. We need to sit down and talk about it. Because my most recent ancestors are like my dad, my uncles, my dad, and my grandparents. I would not come in and be like, you know what? No.
I'm just
I
like,
would, yeah, with my, yeah, yeah, because I would be like, Papa, and I would be able to like speak one on one with him, right? So what easy is that then I will speak to him, right? I will say, Papa, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in my normal one, and then I'll say, please pass on the message to the elders, right? Because yeah, obviously I don't want to be speaking directly to them, and then they might see me as being disrespectful and right? But yeah, it's like a big, huge. It's like a room full of family, guys.
that's really
Family, and
interesting.
yeah, they all have their different characters. They all have their different whatever. And what is important is that not all of them are out there to get you.
Yeah, word.
Yeah.
um so Dudu also just shared a comment that I'd like to read out here as well and bring her into the conversation too. She writes, I've not known quite well how to express effectively what writing is and means to me. I'm loving myself enough to not feel like I'm being boastful when I acknowledge my gifts.
Yeah.
I do say that writing is a spiritual gift of mine, a higher purpose served by telling and capturing stories. It is for me, as Bell Hooks says, and she quotes, it is clear that writing, recovering life for me is a spiritual task. I believe that writing is the work of the spirit, close quote. Resonating even more with me is when she says, quote, from the sense that I'm called in writing to give testimony. That is my spiritual vocation, close quote. I love how she describes this, and I feel like these words echo with me because they are true about me. I just need to explore this more and actually write more to honor and respect this gift. My fear and self-doubt has been a hindrance to my writing, I think. But I'm growing out of this and starting to claim my place and role. And I am so freaking happy to read this because I know Dudu writes. So Dudu writes, and Dudu has been an editor of magazines, like full on magazines. And I think it goes back, yeah, and I think it goes back to, and she's an amazing writer, an amazing storyteller. And I think it goes back to that thing that Belle also writes about. Like sometimes, like she wrote about it in an earlier chapter. I'm forgetting which chapter it is. It's that thing of like not being comfortable with being seen, like not being comfortable being seen, not being comfortable being recognized or even like celebrated for the work that we do. And you spoke about it as well earlier on, that thing of like, okay, we work, but we don't even like reward ourselves a little bit or like acknowledge that indeed, like what we do takes work. And what we do, if you're doing a good job, you do a good job. If you're doing your best, you're doing your best. Is there room for growth and improvement? Always. But like,
Always.
yeah, but like, yeah, it's so dope to just not be afraid to fully embrace one's gifts and step into that. I often have these conversations with my brother about purpose and living fully within one's purpose, and how our purpose is not necessarily linked to our family structure, our community structure, our gender, or any kind of physical or societal thing. Our purpose is not linked to that. Our purpose is linked to the role that we have been given to play by the one who's in whose image we are made, right? Like whoever, well, this is what I would like to believe. I'd like to believe this because it it gives some kind of structure and meaning to life. Um, oh, and Moleboheng just joined. Hello, hello, hello. Um,
Oh,
and and I love that idea of how living our lives, and we're always talking about how important it is to live one's life fully within one's purpose. Like whatever your purpose is, just do that, Wawan. Because if you do that, then
mm-hmm.
the fullness of life, the fullness of experience, the fullness of the manifestation of your gifts, all of your gifts, including your spiritual gifts, including all the abundance, and the community that we crave so much, and being able to be fully participatory members of the community. Because if you're living in your
Absolutely.
purpose, then you're fully able to give your gifts, and be of service within your gifts. And that's, I think, a beautiful part of community as well.
Yes. Um, I mean, I mean, when you started talking, I mean, I was thinking about, that imposter syndrome is a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I read Dudu's comments like 3 times, and I'm just like, guys, why am I not writing? Because I know I have community, right? I know I have all these people that are just like, you need to write. I mean, we've been waiting for years for you to just write. And I'm just like, yeah, when I'm ready. Yeah, now I'm just reading, guys. Now I'm just reading. Let me just, when I'm ready, right?
Yeah.
And it goes back to we had a couple of days ago, like, when are you going to be ready? How do you even know you're going to be ready? Just, but, I mean, and that first chapter that we discussed about, being so harsh on ourselves, being such harsh critics of our own work. If we just let that go, I mean, I'm just saying this. I know it's not easy to just let it go because, when you were talking also now about being able to celebrate what we do, the work that we do, right? I'm also thinking about how it's important to just not get carried away, right? So, I mean, we know the whole one-hit wonder narrative, right? Yes, where you just are like so good, right? You do the work and it's so good, but you get carried away by, the exposure, the feel goods, right? All of that. You just get carried away by them, and then you just don't go back to your work. So it's important that you be grounded as well. That you ground yourself and you just like, cool, I see this, it's good work, right? I'm gonna celebrate, but I'm not gonna lose focus. Yes, because it's continuous work. It's continuous work. It's just like, I mean, you don't get a job, work for 1 month, and you're just like, yeah, I'm done, guys. I'm resigning. You go back, right? Go back next month, then you work again, and you build on whatever you've done, right? So yeah, but I also wanna just touch on the loneliness of doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Bell writes, without knowing how to be alone, we cannot know how to be with others and sustain the necessary autonomy. And I don't know if you've heard this, that whole you were born alone and you die alone type of thing. Mm. Even if you find a partner, if you live your whole lives together, even if you're right, I've never heard of an instance where like a married couple or lovers or whatever die instantly together. It's always like one died today, the other one died 2 weeks later. The one, and the narrative is always the other one died of heartache because the other one was not living anymore. But going back to the point, you live alone, you are born alone, and then you will die alone. So a lot of the work that you do, a lot of the internal work that you do yourself. Even if you're holding somebody's hand when you pray or when you, when you work or when you it is your work.
Mm.
It is you that is going within and walking the path and going on this journey, and it's important. And I love this. I love reading this part about being alone um because we're a lot of us are alone now, right? A lot of us are alone, and I mean, I saw although a lot of people were making fun of the whole billions and billions from Cyril Ramaphosa's speech, a lot of people were also coming in and saying, guys, um, what it looks like is that we're going to be in this for the long run.
Hmm.
So just prepare yourselves, right? We're not immediately going to come out of this. So, as much as you've been alone and you've coped so far, prepare to be more alone, right? Even more alone going forward.
Mm.
So I mean, there are conversations going around about how how to be in a relationship when you're apart, how to, all of those things. But the essential thing here is that we are alone, and in our aloneness, we are now having to do everything ourselves, for ourselves, by ourselves. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just again say, Bell also quotes Henry Nouwen in our Out of Solitudes, and she says that Henry reminds us to attend to our need for solitude. Somewhere we know that without a lonely place, our lives are in danger. Somewhere we know that without silence, words lose their meaning. That without listening, speaking no longer heals. Somewhere we know that without a lonely place, our actions quickly become empty gestures. Right? So without taking that time to just breathe and just be on your own, I think that for me, and because I'm in lockdown with my kids, the most important spaces and the times that have been most important were like times in my garden. Times, when I'm alone, and that's the probably only one of the only times where I'm alone. And there's also, like, I take an afternoon nap every day. So I'll tell my kids, I'll say to them, I'm gonna go nap. Could you guys not open the door? Right? And then obviously 15 minutes before my nap, I'll be alone, just getting myself into that sleep mode. And those are important. Thinking, right? You're thinking, you're with yourself, and you're thinking with yourself, and you're going over everything that is happening around you. Yeah.
I love that. Because it is. I mean, there's a phrase in Setswana that I hear people say it all the time. I've heard people say it all the time over the years, but it made a lot of sense in recent years. The phrase "go itetsa," like "go itetsa," "go imamela," like where you're sitting, and like the literal translation is that like you're sitting and you're listening to yourself. But like a deeper, of course, understanding, it's like it's self-reflection, it's taking the time to sit, be quiet, and like go through a process, go through listen, be still. And again, I'm going to be all biblical about it, haha. And there's this quote that says, "Be still and know that I am God." And I love that quote as well, because it does again speak of this thing of like stillness, like be still. And in that stillness, in that ability to just sit and listen, therein lies the beginnings of knowing and understanding who God is, and the nature of divinity, and the nature of, all that is, or whatever. Or even like knowledge of self, like even self-knowledge, and just giving yourself time to do that, and go within. And I love how Dudu speaks about, right, she quotes Bell, and she says, where Bell writes, "I believe that writing is the work of the spirit." And I mean, girl, when I write, I need it to be quiet. Like, it has to be quiet. Like, it has to be quiet. I have to be alone. There can't be people coming in, tapping you on your shoulder. They can't be like, so it's really quiet. Like, it's quiet work. It's self-reflective work. And it's not just writing, um, maybe painting or sculpting or gardening or running or just the thing that you can do even if you're not kind of sitting in like silent contemplation and meditation, but that thing that you can do that allows you to enter into that state where you feel calm, at ease, able to untangle all the little tangled parts that you feel are tangled in you. And it's
Mm.
such a valuable like process. And
Yeah.
then Dudu says, yo, on being alone, it's hardest to do because I know that's where the real shit starts going down. the the internal
Yeah.
reflection, the thoughts, but oh, do we need it? It occurred to me that
Mm.
in life, that solitude is something I need. I'm a very people person, but I'm learning about myself for the past 2 years or so. I'm learning about myself the past 2 years or so that I need to be alone. I don't always know how to ask for it though, nor carve out this
Mm.
time. I can relate with that too,
Yes.
sis.
Mm.
Um, One of the things I hope to carry on with me after Corona is the alone time. This is one of the gifts given to me by this lockdown. I'm spending time in
Mm.
solitude more than ever before, and I know that's where the magic is going to start happening. I always
Yeah.
do for others, and I hope I will be doing more for myself in this regard after this. Yes, that is so dope. And so I can relate to this as well so much. I think a lot of us can. The thing where you're always like
Yeah.
doing and doing and doing and going and going, and especially extroverted people, because extroverted people are energized when they're engaging with others, right? It's like that engagement, like, and you're chatting and you're talking and it's da 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 and it's community and it's this and this and this and this. But there's always space. And I think, like you're saying, it's always necessary to like come back, even if it's like awaranyana manyanama, like just an awanyana,
Mm.
just to
Mm.
settle, like settle, reflect. Yeah, it's a beautiful process. A beautiful
Yeah.
process going
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm just gonna just bring in another, like, one last quote,
Yes.
um, from the book. Talking, taking time to experience ourselves in solitude is one way we can regain a sense of the divine, that we feel the spirit moving in our lives. And I know you read this earlier. Solitude is essential for the spiritual, for it is there that we can only commune with our divine spirit, but also listen to our inner voice. Yes, without the noise. You know, I don't know. I've heard this where somebody said everything is noise, like everything else is noise.
Word.
So everything, yeah, everything happens here. It happens here in this body within yourself, and everything outside of it is noise. So yeah, I think we should just embrace this alone time
I like that
and let.
too.
Mm,
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
okay.
I don't know if there's any other things that we can maybe bring up from the chapter, or if anybody who's tuned in would like to contribute anything else that they kind of picked up from the chapter, um, or whether we can kind of do a thing where we is that today? Or are we doing this today, or are we doing it tomorrow?
Uh,
Tomorrow.
where we, yeah,
Yeah, okay. Never mind. um, because I don't know. I feel like then in that case I'd like to share a little bit about writing and then the process of writing and what it's been for me. And I think it's
yeah.
cool when where does Bell writes about it. I'm trying to see where and if I highlighted it, but it doesn't look like I did. But anyway, so my parents divorced. Well, they separated when I was about 12 years old.
mm,
And it was a really intense and hectic time. And it was during this time that my father bought
mm,
me a diary. It was my first ever diary. I was 12 years old and I still have it today. It was this,
oh,
it's like orange and yellow flowers on the cover, and it had like a little gold, like lock. So it locked, girl.
yeah,
So when I think about it now and I remember it, like, and I remember what that gesture was. So he bought me the diary and a fountain pen. And then
mm,
my uncle Tunde bought me a fountain pen, and it had all these eyes on it, like purple and blue eyes. It was so pretty. And that was the beginning of my journaling. Like that's when I started to journal and to write. And that that gesture and that space with the little lock in it, that was my own little private space. Like it was a private space for me to
mm,
write what I thought, write what I felt, and also get into the practice of writing. And I feel like it was such a profound gift, because it's only now that I'm a bit older looking back that like it's kind of like that time where it's like, oh, it all makes sense. Like, oh, it all makes sense that, one would find so much solace in reading and writing, um and just the space with words. And it just like, it really is like a comfort, and it is like a kind of sacred space as well. Yeah, I just wanted to share that and shout out my dad because he's awesome.
that is indeed awesome, right? And so I don't want to dim your light. I'm so sorry, but I
No.
just remembered something when you were talking, right?
Mm.
About my diary experience. So when we were like 12, the diary was the thing to buy, right? Also because we were reading like Sweet Valley
Yes.
High.
So corny.
So I got a diary for my birthday 1 year from my best friend, and so that was, I was also writing at that point in my life, right? And
Mm.
then the one day, I don't know what's happening with my mother, but we were like, I think there was just a thing happening, and then she walked into my room, and I was writing in my diary, right? And then she took my diary, and then she read my diary,
Oh.
and then I could not. So I'm realizing when you talk about the safe space that your diary was, and that lock, right? The importance of that secret.
Mm.
I mean, you watch like teen movies, and you read young adult literature, and it's always such a big thing when somebody reads somebody's diary.
It
Like,
really is.
you read?
It is like it's a violation. It's a crossing of a boundary.
Yeah, right. So I'm also now realizing that part of me just not coming out and writing as comfortably as I'd like to is because for a very, very long, and I've tried to journal, right? I've tried to journal my young adult life. I've tried on the computer, I've tried on and I mean, a lot of great writers always kept like diaries,
Mm.
right? I mean, yeah. There's like collections of like C.S. Lewis's diaries and journals, and all of those people.
Mm.
So I'm also thinking about that. I'm also thinking that because that's the other thing that because I don't really write for myself in a private space. It's hard for me to write for people, right? Because I still fear because like and that's another thing that I'm struggling to separate the private with the work, right? Um so and when you're talking about the diary, I'm thinking if I wrote for myself, right, there'll be stuff that I'll have for myself. And then it won't spill into my work. And then I'll be able to write for work, right? And it won't just be a whole like people are like peeping into my private life and
Mm,
right. So
mm.
yeah, much for bringing that diary experience out.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing as well. Like, it's so hectic. I'm sorry that happened because I know it's hectic when something like that happens. It's so traumatic, and it makes
Yeah.
total sense for even just the idea of journaling again to be like kind of triggering and like, oh my gosh. Um, and girl, I really think that it's something you can try. Ke feel like you should just try because there's like such a great reward at like, and I think it helps anyone. I think journaling can help anyone. Um, so there's this woman, I'm forgetting, I'm gonna look it up quickly. She's the author of a book called The Artist's Way. Um, her name is Julia Cameron. So Julia Cameron wrote The Artist's Way in the 1990s. And it's such a dope book because the purpose of it was kind of it's a self-help book also. And um, it was written for people in artistic and creative recovery. And it teaches techniques and exercises. And now I'm reading the wiki page on how to assist people in self confidence and harnessing their creative talents and skills. And one of the exercises that she recommends is called the morning pages. So
Okay.
the morning pages are basically um, she suggests that you do them first thing when you wake up, even if it's for 15 minutes to half an hour. If you can give it an hour, you should. The idea is to write for as long as you can, but it's basically like free writing or automatic writing. So you wake up and the first thing you do is you reach over, you grab your notebook or your laptop and you just write. Like you just write for 15 minutes. Whether for the whole 15 minutes you're writing, I don't know what I'm writing, I don't know why I'm writing, why am I doing this? This feels awkward. This is strange. But you just
Yeah.
write for
Right.
15 minutes until you build up the practice where you're able to like open yourself up a lot more. I did this once for a while. It was really helpful, just for unlocking stuff. It's such a beautiful practice. Julia Cameron is
Yeah,
the
and I mean,
bomb.
yeah, I'm thinking I should read that book now. But also, dream journaling works the same way, right?
Oh yes.
Because yeah, so in the spiritual sense, when you dream, right? It's always it's always advised that you have like a journal next to you. That the first thing, because you will remember, like when you first wake up, like 2 hours later, an hour later, you would have forgotten some aspects of your dream. So it's always advised that the moment you wake up, you just write down what you remember from what you dreamt. Yeah.
And I think Bell actually brings it up as well that like dream interpretation, dreaming and dream interpretation is such an important part of like spiritual practice as well, and like feeling whole. And it's such a like, I really, thanks for bringing it up as well, because it's such an important thing to also just be aware of what we're dreaming, when we're dreaming, why we're dreaming, you know.
Right.
um yeah, I always envy those people who say like this amazing piece of creative output came from a dream, it came to me in a dream. And I'm always just like, damn it, why are my dreams always so weird? Why can't my dreams be like a whole song?
Yeah. Right. Ah, man. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're time our time is up for today.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, I'll defer to you, sis. I was
Okay.
like,
There's a comment. Can we read through this comment? Because I know
oh
her network was like
yes.
out. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see. My bad, my bad. Also, Silalo. Oh, your dad is awesome, Ganete. Shout out. Oh, yes, yes, thanks. Um, so Dudu says, I don't remember my first diary, but I remember the way I felt when it was read. You're so violated. My mom read mine once upon a time when I was a teenager, but there was a friend who I would let read my diary. Namsa, R.A.P.
Mm.
Rest in peace. So in that sense, I was a teenager then, and she was my best friend. It was a way of showing myself and sharing with a close friend. So a diary is a very intimate and personal place. I still have one as an adult, and it is still my secret keeper. So much so that when I write a will, I've already decided Dipuka is the person who will get my diaries. Lol. She
Oh,
knows where all the bodies are anyway. um, but we need journals. I do anyway, because I'm crazy. And if I don't get my thoughts out of my head sometimes,
yeah.
um, yeah, out of my head and heart.
Sorry,
I love
really.
that. She knows where all the bodies are.
Eh,
Woo!
Any, so, and I mean, I'm thinking now with that comment that I mean, a lot of us are. I mean, I'm certainly an analytic thinker, so I'm one of those people that draw circles. So, like from a thought, 10 other thoughts will come, and then 20 other thoughts, and then I'll go around in circles, and then just trying to. And I think putting that down on paper would help, definitely.
Hmm. Also,
Mm.
we've been waiting for your writing, ma. So I'm just gonna say it for the record, on camera, on record.
Okay, I'm gonna close out from my side, right? At the time, I'm also running away from this conversation. So yeah, so that was our last chapter, and tomorrow we are doing a wrap up, and I'm excited because we will then get to look at some of the books. One of the best things about Belle's book is that she has like a whole bibliography at the end with like awesome books. So we get to just go through some of those and just talk about our experience. So tomorrow,
Yay! I'm looking forward to it too.
yeah,
Because it's been such a really amazing time. And yeah, I guess we get to peep in and see what we can do, maybe going forward. I'm having separation anxiety, guys, as well. So do I'm there with you, my sister. I'm
it's
just like, no,
like
I don't want to go. But yeah, so I guess we'll link up again tomorrow. Same time, same place. Bye.
hey,
Thanks for joining in.